So our next speaker is a good friend of mine, and just honored to present her for you all, Miss S. Renee Mitchell. She is, this is a short bio, but we're just gonna give it. 2019-2020 Spirit of Portland Award winner. She is best described as a creative revolutionist because she is a difficult to define and too multifaceted to compartmentalize, and I can bear witness. She is amazing. She's motivated by intention, joy, and heart work. And Renee is also an experienced storyteller, a performer, educator who creates beauty with her words, her mind, and her hands. Yes, all of that. So at this time, pass the mic to Miss S. Renee Mitchell.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so glad to be here. I am going to go right to sharing my screen. So I do have a little, oh, okay, share sound. I got something in store for you. And I'm going to make it presenter view. The title of my, what I'd like to say to you all is, when will we learn? It's not the head, it's the heart. And I'm going to share a little bit more about what I mean by that in just a second. So for those of you who wanted to know a little bit more, I was a former journalist for 25 years. I also was a high school teacher, and I'm so grateful for that experience because it allowed me to see that what I experienced was still happening. I do a lot of really, really creative things. I'm also getting my doctorate degree at the University of Oregon. So this work that I'm going to share with you really comes from the heart. This is the work that I want to do for the rest of my life. And I'm also the visionary for an organization called M.O.R.E, and I'm going to share a little bit more about that with you. On the left-hand side is my children's book. I wrote this to help Black children in particular be able to find their courage and learn how to be brave in the face of oppression. So I want to first get grounded, just because I get, real nervous when I'm speaking, even though I do this for a living. So I have this little thing here, and I'm going to just allow us to, I'm going to click it a few times, and we could just take a breath to just get grounded with us being here together in this particular conversation. So as I click this, just settle yourselves and take a breath and breathe out. And if some of you want to hold, touch your heart while you do it, that will also support. Thank you. All right, so what is M.O.R.E? M.O.R.E is an acronym. It means making ourselves resilient every day. And it's very, very strength-based. It's based on evidence of what really works for Black students. We put a lot of love into what we do. We feel like that is so important for a healing process. And we help them move through the world as empowered change agents, not only for themselves, but for others. And so this is like a visual representation of what our programming is. So it starts, of course, with trained and caring adults. I mean, you really have to love working with young people. We base it on love for ourselves, love for our Blackness, love for each other as a community. We tap into our history, our ancestral gifts, very, very culturally relevant. We use a lot of social emotional learning, trauma-informed practices, social justice frameworks, and the Sankofa is symbolic for reaching back and getting your wisdom. So when we get access to these Black teens, we put them through M.O.R.E programming, and it's a 3-step process, and I'll explain a little bit more about that. So what we're pouring in is critical consciousness, social justice activism, and arts and creativity. And that kind of mixture of ingredients tends to lend itself toward building resiliency in these young people, also hope and joy and healing. And so it becomes this transformational process where they start to learn to love themselves and love themselves as Black people. And then our statement of our theory of change is like, when I am in my power, I empower. So, we've been confronted with like, why do we try to focus so much on Black students. Like, other students need this too. Well, you know, we have a history that I unapologetically say, I'm going to focus on this young group, this group of young people, and I'm not going to apologize for that. So this is just a kind of a graphic. This is something I created in my dissertation process. I believe it's the only time where we've used this Grafenbrenner macro system, mesosystem, all of these systems that we encounter with, but set it up from an African-American experience. And when I was doing my research, I was realizing that has never been done. So I'll be able to share this with you when you see the slides later. So the problem is, another reason why I focus on Black students is because when I went into the classroom, I realized, man, the stuff what was happening to me decades ago is still happening. And so our Black children, their spirits are being murdered. And this is a term that came out in the 70s in some of the research that was coming. It has come back around, the phrase spirit murder, but that really is what it is all about. And I just feel like I have a sense of urgency. We cannot wait any longer. So again, like the last presenter was saying, we've had trauma. We've dealt with trauma. This is nothing new, but it still has a very, very deep effect on how we show up in the world. And sometimes we look at trauma first rather than the humanity of our children. And trauma cannot be the whole of one's truth. So this is what it was when I was a child. So this is my 5th grade class. And you see me right in the center with the orange and the black, and I'm smiling, even though I was like a bullied child. I was very insecure. I was always very sad. But when someone tells me what to do, I've been trained, do what you're supposed to do. So I smiled, and you see there's only one other Black student. This is 2 classes of 5th grade students, and there were only 1 per class. So the reason why I mentioned this class is because it had a profound effect on me when it comes to trauma. So my teacher is in the far left. That's Mr. Golf. And a couple students over, 3 students over, his name is George. And there was one day I came in with my hair braided, and he decided that I was going to be his target again. And so he came up. I loved school. I loved reading. I had slight dyslexia because I didn't know what it was. Now that I know, I would transpose words and that kind of thing. But I loved reading. I loved being, smart. I loved learning. And I would sit in the front of the classroom, and my teacher was there at the blackboard. And so George came to me and started pushing on me and calling me names and pulling my hair. And I'm looking at my teacher with my eyes like big as saucers. And he turns his back. And that has been my experience throughout the school. And it was a spring day, so I ran out, and George followed me and beat me up, and no one asked me about it. Like, no one advocated. My parents didn't know these kinds of things were happening. I shut down. And so my whole K through 12 experience, I was told, I was told I was not college material when I was in high school. Here I am getting my doctorate degree, right? And so I didn't have my first Black teacher until I went to a historically Black college, Florida A&M. And that was when I first started to understand the depth of my potential was so different from what I had been told. And as you,
I'm
yes.
sorry, I know you were flowing. There has been a request for the screen to be made into presenter view because they're not able to see the full slides. I am so sorry to interrupt you.
I thought I was in presenter view. Okay. Oh, thank you.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay,
keep going. You were on it. Getting your doctorate degree, that's where you're at.
So at the at the bottom of this, you could see how I wrote about some parts in life you have to defend yourself from bullies who are always picking on you. That was the story of my life. So becoming a teacher, I learned, hey, this is still going on. There's still all this bias. I just assumed everything was cool, different. It was my experience, right? But schools continue to be a site of Black suffering for our students. And James Baldwin said it, a child cannot be taught by anyone that despises them. And so we often blame the child for not connecting when really it's about there's something going on within that. And we are absorbing as Black people, we internalize some of the things like particularly what I was going through, all of these things that I list, this voicelessness, this sense of self, this disconnection, this rage, like, what do I do with it? This is so wrong. Why isn't anything doing why aren't things happening differently? And so now you're getting these buzzwords. Oh, let's do trauma-informed practices, but they very, very rarely name the systemic issues that create our trauma and increase the impact of the trauma. Then they're doing, oh, SEL, social emotional learning, is a whole nother buzzword that's going around. But like Deanna Simmons says, without any cultural context, it's white supremacy all over again. But with a hug, it really doesn't really solve the problems. So you get these kids who have this inner rage, and I had rage, but I didn't give myself permission to express it. There were some in my family who did, because we were the only Black kids, or one of very few in our school. So there was a lot of rage. And so basically, this is an African proverb, but the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. We all want a sense of belonging. We all want to be seen. We all want to be listened to. And that often is not happening. Instead, we're being blamed for systemic issues. And that's documented by the research. So for the most part, we're like, what is wrong with these kids? Why aren't they learning? Why aren't they progressing? Why is the achievement rate still the same as it was decades ago? Well, the issue is not what's wrong with our children's heads. It's that our hearts are broken. We're going into places and we sense that we're not welcome, and we're not liked, and we're not valued. And so then that's heartbreaking for children. And so I Am More started because these three young ladies were my mentees at Roosevelt High School, where I was a teacher. And there were only 4 students in Portland, Oregon, who received this grant from Stand for Children. It was a $16,000 grant called Beat the Odds, where you had to really talk about your trauma, which is a whole nother story about how that re-traumatizes people. But anyway, of the 4 people in Portland, 3 of them were my Black Girl Magic mentees. And so we put a flag in the ground and we started like, what can we do to help other young people deal with their trauma? So I made them co-founders of all of this. And we started like, let's just talk about resiliency, right? And so this happened in late 2018. 2019, we had our first public performance, and we are now in the process of building this resiliency building movement. We are the only organization in Oregon who has gotten national awards for our culturally specific social emotional learning. And we're planning to just really take it out to the rest of the country. So what makes us different? Because there's a lot of youth development organizations doing things with youth. Well, we don't give kids something to do. We give them someone to become. And we focus so intently on what is right about them, right? We understand that there has been trauma, but we want to focus on what's right in your life, not look at you from some deficit lens. So we have a 3-step process. Our first step is inside out. That's when the critical consciousness, that's helping them understand that this is not necessarily your individual issue. This is a systemic issue. It's set up to have you fail. And so helping them understand the bigger context was really, really important. And so we give them permission to bring out that rage, to understand why it's so justified. And then we help teach them research skills. So they look back at their life about the issues of trauma and other things that they've experienced and start to understand how to reframe it. So we want to be able to give them an understanding that they are not victims, but they're heroes of their own reimagined story, and how trauma can help us like be signposts to who we're becoming. In my own situation, right, I was bullied, you know, for the K through 12. I had a lot of insecurities. I had a lot of trauma. My father died when I was 11 because of racism. The hospital would not serve him. They did not want Black people in their hospital. And so my father died. He was my hero. I got hit by a car when I was 15. You know, I was sexually assaulted in my first semester in college. I mean, all this trauma, right? So what do we do with it? Well, all of this has led me to I Am More. So we help them connect the dots in ways they never had before and look at their strengths instead of their weaknesses. So our step 2 is outside up. So we then take critical consciousness and social emotional learning and then give them something to do with it, right? So we teach to use the research skills that we've given them. So they now look outside of themselves. What in my community, in my family, in my school, can I address? What can I do to make some change? It could be as simple as, like, one of our students saw that there was no period products in the girls' bathrooms, and got some people together, got the principal to get on board. And now, you know, before there was a pandemic and we were in school, they started putting free menstrual products in all of the girls' bathrooms and in the gender neutral bathrooms. So this young person who had no voice at one point benefited so many other people in the school. And this is what we're about. We're trying to give them wisdom. We're trying to, well, actually bring out their wisdom, but give them the tools to know that they can make a difference. So this is our third and last step, which is up and beyond. So now we're taking all that they've learned and giving them a chance to really share it. And there's something that happens when adults see children giving their wisdom, and then the adults are saying, thank you so much. You've taught me so much. I see myself through your story. I see that how you're brave, and giving them that feedback so that you start to feel, I am seen, I am heard, I am valued. And it changes their belief system and how they can make an impact in the world. So we hold that safe space. And we also train our youth, and we pay them because we feel like we want, you know, as adults, we want to get paid for our wisdom. Well, when we're asking them to share their stories, that is their wisdom, and they deserve to get paid for it because they're an expert on their own lives. And so we have lots of paid opportunities where our youth are speaking and they're facilitating. This is one of our founders, Jadette. And this is just some of her journey. Part of what we do is we take your stories and we frame them like this graphic novel. And what was happening is students were like, I want to tell my story. I want to tell my story. You know, students who had never wanted to talk about what they had experienced are now understanding there is some wisdom in that I could share with other people. So I just want to share her journey real quick. Everyone can hear. Okay.
When the world unravels before you, when your dreams are crumbling stones, when everything you dare to touch sets on fire, and all around you is ash and smoke, remember this. Rock bottom is a perfect place for rebuilding. Remember that you are your mother's daughter. Your grandmother's answered prayers. A whole bloodline of women who bend in response to the raging winds. There is nothing, nothing broken here. Nothing damaged or discarded. Each scar is a badge of honor. Every misstep, a victory dance waiting to happen. You are women becoming, learning the complicated language of forgiveness, the intricate lessons of the universe, and your heart is just a muscle. It needs exercise. And you were born for this sort of heavy lifting. You were born one part saint, one part warrior woman. Loving yourself without shame is the most important thing you will ever have to fight for.
How do I? Okay, I'm sorry. So I have to say, Jeanette grew up in a refugee camp in Tanzania. I had never seen her ever write a poem. So we don't tell them necessarily what to do. We create space, and then what comes out of them that they want to express, they do. So this is the first time she has ever written a poem. She taped it with her own phone. She didn't have any help. She put it all together, the timing of it and everything, and it just blew everybody away, right? And this opened up the opportunity, this video opened up the opportunity for her to have a national speaking opportunity where she was paid and talked about her journey. And this is what I just love to do. This is what I love to see, that our Black children have all this genius, and all they need is someone to say, give them permission to have it come out. So we do everything with love, because when we believe that if you just give them direction on a path, they're going to find their own path, right? They're going to find their own sense of how to express their agency. And they're going to become, like Bell Hooks says, wholehearted. But it has to be this inside out journey. It's not a program that it's not something that you could just do from the outside. There is so much that our children are holding on to. They need an inside out journey. And this video that you just saw is an evidence of what can happen when they take that journey. So our work also impacts the greater community. It isn't just youth that we work with. We also have them engaging with adults, as I mentioned before. And so we're using youth to be able to spread the message about how important it is for their voices to be heard. So we're in the process of working with Portland Public Schools to develop the culturally focused SEL curriculum. There's a lot of SEL curriculum that says, oh, this is culturally relevant, but ours is very Black focused. So there's things that we suggest to do that are based in our ancestral wisdom. So it's very, very different. And we're very, very excited about being able to go down that path. We also, with my doctorate degree, are documenting and we're planning to share this whole inside out process, this 3 steps that I had shared with you, on how we value heart over head. Because when we have their heart, we're going to get their head, right? They're going to want to do more. They're going to want to accomplish more. They're going to, because they're doing it because they're connecting with the achievement, right? Rather than just something you do because I said you do it, right? They're doing it because they feel like they have this belief in themselves. So we also have this intergenerational campaign that we started called Spreading the Black Joy Virus, because with the pandemic happened, we just felt like, what can we do to try to plant more joy into our community? So in various different ways, we're doing that. I invite you to go and check out some of the products. There's a lot of them, different projects that we're doing. And we're including, we did a film called The Black Nod, which is amazing. And it's also available on our website. I encourage you to go and check that out. So again, overall, we have this pedagogy of anti-saviorism. Like, we as adults are not the heroes of your story. We're going to show you how to be the hero of your own story, right? We're going to give you opportunity to share your voice as much as possible. And so this is another a visual representation, because sometimes I think with writing, but I also think visually. And so this is what we call our garden of emotional emancipation. So it's a critical consciousness, which is like helping them understand that systemic racism is present and working against them, right? And so giving them the knowledge so they don't have to take it personally. They don't have to respond in a way that's going to get them kicked out of the classroom. They'll start to use their intelligence to be able to figure out the best way to respond. Also giving them access to social justice activism. That means training them with research skills that they could use the rest of their lives to be able to analyze data and evaluate and be able to create something that makes change. And then arts and creativity, because creativity is the bedrock of healing, of joy. And so we make sure that that is part of everything we do. So Dr. Bettina Love said school officials will put everything before the mental health. They don't understand that test scores cannot and will not increase until students are healing from trauma. And the only way that they're going to heal is there's systems in place that replace the trauma or be able to dissipate some of that trauma that they've been holding on to. But it takes effort, and they cannot probably do it by themselves. They need some folks who could help them understand what their journey might look like. So we reach the head first, and we know that our research shows that the heart will follow. And as you saw in the video, so this is just, this is her words, her voice. I Am More, honestly, has given me a voice that I lost or didn't recognize that I had. And this is what it's all about. We know that there's what is in them only needs opportunity to come out. So you see, this is one of the events we did, this public event called Resiliency and Rhythm, and how the students had, the young people had this idea, let's use fashion to tell our stories. And so in Jeanette's particular story, you see how she transformed trauma into M.O.R.E, which is awakening a methodology of unveiling art. And she's showing you when she was first coming to, before she came to America, she was in a refugee camp. Her life was not, they didn't have access to school. It was about, let me go walk a couple miles to get some water. There was a lot of trauma. And then when she got exposed to education, she realized she had more options. And so then she took all of the things that she had experienced to say, I want to help save people. I want to help heal people. And so now she wants to be a doula and a midwife to help the next generation enter the world. So we, as part of our Spreading the Black Joy Virus, want to provide you with books that kind of speak to what we feel are important. And one of them is Bettina Love's We Want to Do More Than Survive. It's an amazing book. Jelani Membry is from Portland. He has a book that is going all around the country, a kid's book about racism. It's so accessible, and it's a beautifully written book. That is also part of what we would put in our tote bag, and also my children's book. Earlier this week, did a superhero awakening ceremony, and we were singing and chanting and talking about being brave. So if you want to get in touch with us, not only to get more information, but we will enter all the names that we get into a drawing for a Black Joy tote bag. These are because of our sponsors and our partners. Reading is Resistance is one of our partners based in Portland. Children's Community Clinic, where we help young people with mental health and physical health. And on our website is a ton of a bunch of different partners, including Books Not Bars. And so we just want to be able to share our blessings, our love, our joy with you who are listening in. And so we thank you so much for your willingness to interact with me and interact with this amazing conference. And so I hope we have time for a few questions that.
So kind of yes and no. So
Okay.
Ms. Renee, first of all, thank you. And when we open up today's conference, we talked about we will be analyzing the problems in different ways, methodology of looking at the problem, but again, spending time on the solutions. And so this is clearly evident that I Am More is a solution to a lot of what we've heard today when we're talking about systematic racism and infrastructure. And Dr. Brown went all the way to redlining, right? Knowing the history. And so all of that is important. All of that is wrapped up in how we even have I Am More today. And so again, just looking at I Am More as a solution, truly thankful for the work that Renee is doing with the youth co-founders and more and more. So it's just amazing work. There's about 5 questions in there, Renee. So instead of us taking time, I'm going to ask that you jump into Q&A, and just if you go one by one, you should be able to answer them individually because they are very specific to you.
Okay.
There's several questions in there. So thank you all for that. And I will ask you to maybe define critical consciousness. I guess that's a term that was used. We've heard critical race theory, but I think we heard today you mentioned critical consciousness. So if you could answer that real quick, and then we'll go ahead and jump into our panel discussion.
Okay, so for us at I Am More, critical consciousness is the awareness that what you thought was a personal flaw is actually a systemic issue, right? So that allows you to stop internalizing it and start to give yourself the power to understand that you can try to change that, right? So that's like raising your consciousness about what's possible for you, because now you have the knowledge to understand there's so many things working against you. You got to work for yourself and others.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. You would have meant that's a better definition right there in person. I don't know if you could have typed that energy. So thank you. And yes, Ms. Renee will go in the chat in the Q&A and answer some of your questions. Amazing. So